Well, good morning. Welcome back. Today, another video working on the Impala. I want to say that I don't necessarily dislike doing it, but sometimes all the little problems that come up, you can just kind of... Not that I'm complaining, because I'd much rather be doing this than actually working or whatnot. But anyways, so today's video, as you know, we're back from Hot Rod Power Tour. That was 2 weeks ago now. Time flies. And on the tour, check engine light came on. So today's video is going to be about how to read OBD1 codes when they come up and try to figure out what's going on with the Impala. So let's get into it. So for you guys that don't know, back in the 80s at some point, a lot of tuning and everything, computers started coming on to cars, so they decided to put these on, give check engine lights, and give a way to read them. And I want to say 87, 88, basically the OBD or onboard diagnostics came out, and it has a pin connector, a data link connector that goes inside your car. Well, this ran until 1995. 96, they changed over to the OBD2, way more advanced, better reading, and OBD2 is actually what they still currently use today. Updated versions and whatnot. So the Impala, she's a 1995, so OBD1 last year for it. There are some stuff where there's a lot of trouble trying to read the codes for a 95 specifically, but we're going to get into mine and see what we can do, and if we can't, we can't, but well, we'll try. So a couple different readers you guys can get. This one right here I got from Harbor Freight. It was Zurich, and it was about 90 bucks. Not top of the line, but not bottom of the line either. It actually bought it for the Trailblazer because I had a check engine light that kept coming on and reading it, and it works out pretty well. Goes through, tells you all your kind of trouble codes and whatnot that you can and can't do with this one. This is the ZR8S, which is right here. Of course, there's 3 more models that go up, and of course the major one will do all those things. The one I got is kind of limited, but it still is good enough for right now for what I needed. So I have that one. Also have this cheaper, chintzier little guy. This was about 40 bucks from O'Reilly's. No, don't mind the 20, that's from garage sale stuff. So that was about 40 bucks from O'Reilly's, and yeah, I mean, you could tell it's got the 16-pin data link connector plug-in, 2 buttons on it, versus this one. It doesn't have as many prongs on it, so this one might be more universal than that one. I'm not sure. Honestly, probably the only difference on the upgrade in this is probably this harness to these topper models to make them read out, but who knows. So since these are for OBD2 connectors, I did check out on eBay, and I have this jumper cable. Purchased this for about 7 bucks, and what it does is it goes from the 16-pin data link connector from OBD2 down to OBD1 plug. So this will actually plug in OBD1 ports, and then you should be able to plug your OBD2 sensor into it. See if it works. I'm not sure. We're going to test that out today. So yeah, we're going to start with the data link connector and the Harbor Freight scan tool, and we're going to see what it does. So for any stock factory application, as long as it's not modified, your port connector is always going to be underneath your dash, and you can see that the link right here is just above the gas pedal. It basically just has 3 prongs in it, from what it looks like, 1, 2, 3, and that's really it. Kind of basic. So let's plug her in. And we're just gonna wedge it on here. Come on, guy. For whatever reason, when it came in the package, it was a little funky here. So let me straighten that out here a little bit and get it plugged in. All right, so that's plugged in. And now we're just gonna take the data link connector and plug it into our Harbor Freight OBD2. Now, I will say when I plug the OBD2 into any other vehicle that I work on, it automatically gets power going right to it unless there's a problem with fuses or whatnot. So I'm not sure what this is going to do. We might have to just turn the key on or whatnot, but I'm going to go ahead and plug this in and see what happens. So, got nothing. So let me go ahead and find the key. Let's turn the car on, at least turn the ignition over and see if it comes to life. We got nothing. Interesting. All right, well, before we get too crazy, let's take the other one here and plug it in and see what it does. Okay, so now we got the other one plugged in here. Still got nothing on the power. Go ahead and flip the key on. So it's kicking on. And we got nothing. I was hoping that this one might read because it's got this /EOBD thing. So I was hoping it would kind of work with this system, but it's not going to. So unfortunately, what does that mean? Well, we have to read the code some way, somehow. And obviously our OBD2 system readers are not going to work. I don't have an OBD1 system. I did at once upon a time buy a plug that would plug into this, hook to the laptop, and it would read like various things in the engine, oil pressure and whatnot. But where that code went, or a reader plug went, versus my laptop versus the software that I had installed on a computer 10 years ago, that's just going to be more a pain in the butt than it is. So it's not going to help us out today. So what are we going to end up doing? Well, let's go down and check our plug out and then we'll see. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can see that my plug has only got the upper right hand corner there. It's got the AB power supply, and then underneath A, it's got another port, which all the way to the right there. And then the other ones are blank. This is the 12-pin style OBD1 plug. Some 95s, anything, Caprice, Firebird, Blazer, truck, they might have an OBD2 port on the car itself, but the computer is still going to be OBD1. So people have been having a hard time reading it, and I think what it was the memo didn't get across that this is what the plug is and this is the computer we're putting in. So either way, so what I think we're going to try now is the old school method of using a paperclip. And if you guys have never used a paperclip to jump an OBD1 computer before, I'm about to show you. So there's a paperclip I have. It's got a little coating on it. So first thing I got to do is I got to scrape off the little ends here because we want to use it like a wire. So I'm going to do that. So do like in my case and find the most fanciest paperclip you can find. So you got to scrape off the ends, as I just mentioned. But anyway, use the one grit down there on the ground to just scrape it off and crudely make a U out of it like so. And you want to, basically we're going to take this and we're going to jam it into that A and B port. There's a quick down and dirty of what the port looks like. And we're going to take the paper clip and we're going to put it into A and B. And we're not going to touch this one right here. We're just going to put it into A and B and make sure that the ignition is off. So when you get it in there, it's going to look a little something like that. Now we're going to go ahead and turn the ignition on. And as you can see, our check engine light's off. So what we want to do now is we're going to pull the plug out with the key on, and then we're going to put it back in, and then we're going to watch the check engine light. And what's going to end up happening is your check engine light's going to flash a sequence of flashes. And what it's going to do is it's going to flash once, and then 1, 2, once, 1, 2, once, 1, 2. It'll do that 3 times. And that's telling you that the computer is going into service mode or diagnostics mode. And after you see that sequence, your check engine light's going to flash for a series of 3 more times. So it might go 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. Take note on those. If it goes twice and then once, you want to write that down, 2 and 1 or 21. 21 is going to be your check engine code that you're going to have to go look up and see what the problem is, what the culprit is. Once it's done reading that code for 3 times, it's going to do the 1, 1, 2, 3 times, and then it'll do it into the next code. It'll continue to do that through all the codes that are stored into the computer. So let's get into this and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the ignition back on, and you can see the check engine light's not on. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. And I can hear that it's working because you can see the check engine lights come back on and my cooling fan's kicked off. But let's go ahead and plug it back in. And we can hear the cooling fans kick back on, and let's see what the check engine light, if it does anything. Nothing. Well, unfortunately, this special breed of 95 Impala SS continues to throw me for a loop. Let me show you. If we do the jumper thing, A and B, and we go to turn the car on, check engine light kicks off, but the cooling fan is on. Go to start the car, and you can see it flashes repeatedly, and it's running very, very rough. So I'm going to go to pull the plug out, and I can smell it. It smells like it's not running right at all. Paper clip out, it comes back on, go to start, and it starts running normal like it somewhat did before. It's smoothing out. What I'm gathering is whatever I'm having trouble with underneath the hood, I'm jumpering out the computer to turn off the limp mode in the computer, and it's running like crap because there's an issue. The smell, the exhaust, I think we're going to have to just diagnose this one. I hate to say it, but start throwing some parts at it. But we're going to start throwing old parts at it that we've already replaced. Let me get into that. So the things that we changed out on this recently before we left, we put on a new idler air control sensor. Could be it, could not be. We also put on the manifold air pressure sensor. Also, I updated my brake booster line back there, so we could have knocked a vacuum off. So I guess those could be a culprit. I'm just going to give it a quick glance once over, make sure that nothing's silly or whatnot, like, you know, maybe this harness is loose because I broke that clip and I didn't replace it, but that's actually tucked in there. When the check engine light came on, if you guys remember a couple videos ago, we were on the way down to power tour, and it was raining hard. Well, I hit a big puddle where it was like kind of hydroplaned, and it's almost sounded like a stick or something got clumped up against the transmission tunnel or whatnot. But shortly after that is when the check engine light came on. But as you guys saw when I was driving, it would go on, come off randomly through the course of the week. So that tells me maybe something underneath the car is where we need to start. So I'm going to go ahead and jack this thing up and just kind of look at it. So first and most formally, make sure you are doing your jacking on the most inconvenient place at all. you know, the driveway here, which slopes down that way. Second, go ahead and put one of the cheapest ramps you can find underneath one of your wheels, so when you go to lift the car up, it doesn't roll away on you. You know, maybe we'll stick a block underneath the front tire. Thirdly, make sure no one's home so you can have the car roll away and roll you over, and then that way you can be the wheel stop. Kidding, of course. Make sure you do things safely. Don't get hurt. That's just, don't do it. Use your common sense. I'm going to use 3 cents. So by the way, as I'm jacking this up, of course the rear end's coming up. I'm noticing that at one point it was actually pretty level, but when I was sitting here it was kind of kiltered that way. Almost wondering if this shock is twisted or broken or spring's gone. I don't know. So we're going to look at that because it was a little squatted. But anyway, go ahead, jack it up. I'm going to go grab a jack stand so I can get this a little bit more secure for my liking. And then I'll get back with you. So as we go through, check out things underneath the car. That O2 sensor looks fine. The wires don't look frayed or anything. I did notice that the heat stuff for that knock sensor, I think it's a knock sensor, maybe not. Is that the knock sensor? I can't really see, but that wire looks like that might have come undone. Maybe that's part of our culprit. Passenger side, looks like that one is okay-ish. Yeah, for the most part, that one looks fine. Starter, you can see, caked in oil. Uh-oh. Looks like our rear main is starting to leak. And we got quite the drippage going on for the rest of the car. Yeah, not really noticing anything else underneath here. So that water spot when we hit came from the passenger side, hydroplaned a little bit, and then went up to this side. And what I think it was there was a stick that just got wedged in somewhere and it was banging on the floor as we were hitting bumps and stuff. But I don't see any damage from it. So it's hard to say. The O2 sensors might just be followed out and old because they're about 10 years old. I'm not really sure the lifespan on those things, but well, you never know. So as we look at the back of the car, there's the muffler that is turned sideways. Apparently at one point I welded that one on, so probably the same thing happened to that one. It just eventually twisted, that clamp got loose and whatnot. So that's going to be next video's project to fix that. Is it broke maybe? I don't know how loose that thing is. Let's see. Oh yeah, that thing is just freaking barely hanging on there. Kind of nuts that a clamp coming loose, so after so many years will just bit, but it happens. So we'll have to address that here coming up. And let's take an eyeball now at our rear spring. So as we get in there, the spring looks like doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look twisted. The rubber's still down there in the bottom. Maybe the shock's just blown out. Sway bar links. Yeah, those are probably getting a little tired in those bushings and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know. Definitely ready for an overhaul. The rear end, all that oil from that rear main seal leaking has caked everything back here. That would explain what our oil spatters were in the back of the car. Great. So I guess I'm gonna have to start looking into rear main seal on an LT1 and start to put pieces and parts together, and ideally what it would be to rebuild this or LS swap it. I guess pro versus con, really. Maybe we'll put a junkyard LS in it. Who knows? We'll see. Got one already sitting in there. Slated for a truck, though. So now back up top, since we kind of verified everything down below was okay-ish. We'll pull off this cover and we'll check out our vacuum lines. Actually, we'll pull both fuel rail covers off and just check out the vacuum lines, make sure the boots are not cracked and whatnot. There is a little valve over here that tends to collapse, so maybe it collapsed on us. So let's go check her out. Okay, so this side's off now. We got a couple different vacuums we got to check. We got this one that comes up to the intake. I think it goes down to the OBD. And then we have this one right here, which is just vacuum for, I don't know, I think that one goes down to the OBD as well. And then we have this one, of course, is the one we put on for our brake booster. Oh, what else do we got under there? Looks like a vacuum right here that goes down to over to somewhere right down over that side. Maybe that's the coolant bypass thing that I did. I don't know, have to get in there and look a little harder. And then there's a couple other vacuum lines back there for the EGR valve and whatnot. So just kind of eyeball these, make sure they're all good. When I inspect lines, I'll just check them out, make sure the rubber's nice and good. It's not brittle, fragile. Same thing with these plastic lines. Just kind of give a visual feel and whatnot. Make sure they're all plugged in, pushed in properly. You know, just eyeball them because you just never know. You don't want them to be, you know, blown apart, gross looking, because that'll cause leaks. So, like this one's a little dirty, but I don't think it's too bad. So once you go through and do all that, make sure your visual is good. I like to start the engine up and I will some brake clean, starter fluid, whatever. If you hear the engine perk up, then you know you got a leak somewhere. So at this point, some of you might be thinking, why are you going through chasing all these vacuum lines and hoses and looking at stuff, and what does vacuum even matter? Well, give you the crude, what you don't know kind of down and dirty. So vacuum, you get past on your intake, which is past where your air is sucking in from the motor. As we all know, air-fuel mixture ratio is what controls your clean burns, fuel mileage, all that good stuff, engine running right, so on and so forth. The way these fuel-injected vehicles work, airflow, mass airflow sensor right here regulates how much air is actually coming in. What that's doing is it's saying, hey computer, we have X amount of air coming in. You need to dump X amount of fuel into the system. Sure thing. Into there, kaboom, you get a burn. It's doing this hundreds of times per second. Fires up, adjust the timing, so on and so forth, higher elevation, whatever it might be, it's monitoring it. So you start getting vacuum leaks past your mass airflow sensor. What happens is, one of these is cracked, you're letting in more air past what's already being metered. So you're starting to suck more air into the intake versus what the mass airflow sensor is saying. The computer starts thinking, oh, well, you told us one thing, here's another thing that we're getting because the O2 sensors on the rear, they're not right, so we got to adjust it so we don't blow this motor up, burn it up. So it starts pouring more and more and more and more fuel into the system. Well, when you're doing that, your O2 sensors don't match what your airflow sensor says, mass airflow sensor. You end up getting false readings in the PCM. And what that does is it throws a check engine light saying, hey, there's a problem here. Usually it can pinpoint it to where the problem might be, but it might not. So you want to check all your vacuum leaks and whatnot. Usually a vacuum line is hooked up to some kind of a sensor, and if this sensor is not reading right, the computer will know that, say it should be here, it's not there, that's our, we think our problem is, check there. So that's kind of the down and dirty. I mean, there is a lot more stuff to it than that, but it's pretty basic. And if you plug up all your vacuum leaks where you have a problem, you're not going to get air into the system, into your intake, causing issues, causing running bad. So when it gets to it and your check engine light comes on, it's like, uh-oh, we got a problem, but we still got to run. We're going to throw the computer into limp mode saying, ignore everything, run on this table. This is how much fuel is coming in, this is how much air is coming in, regardless of what you're telling me. So your fuel mileage goes tanked because the computer is trying to save the engine for what it is. So now go ahead and get your favorite brake juice cleaner, something flammable kind of in the can. Start the car up. Go to the front of the car. Oh, don't drop your can. Oofta. Start the car, go to the front of the car and start spraying carefully where your vacuum leaks are, or your vacuum lines are. See if you got a leak. And I can hear it. It's not running right. It's running rough. And it'll probably smooth out once the computer goes to limp mode. But let's try to see if we can figure out if we got a problem somewhere. See how it bogged down when I sprayed it into the filter? We're going to listen for that kind of stuff. Okay, so as you heard when I sprayed some extra into the air cleaner filter thinger there, she kind of perked up. Nope, she kind of died down. Yep. It would have done the same effect if we would have had a vacuum leak somewhere on the system. So right now we know we do not have a vacuum leak. Allegedly, could be something I didn't think of. Maybe it's something silly. Top of the motor, we have no vacuum leak. So you can get a smoke machine, smoke the system, and see if you have a vacuum leak that way. I'm pretty confident I don't. So my next play is I'm going to go back to the old map. Is it the map? Yeah. Manifold air pressure sensor. Because of course I bought a cheap Rock Auto Taiwanese one for $7 versus a Delphi GM style, which is like $80. Maybe that's giving me a problem, because that was the last thing I changed before I started having an issue. I'm gonna go throw this one back on. I mean, it's relatively simple too. 10 mils, 8 mils, 7 mils, whatever mils. I'm gonna pop that on. See if that goes back to running how it should be, turns that check engine light off. If it does, I know that this was the culprit, well, the other one, but simple little things. So old one is off. There's the older one. There's a little plug it ports into. Check this harness out, make sure it's good. Before I go crazy, I'm going to get my multimeter and I'm gonna see what kind of readings we're getting out of this plug. That plug might be bad, might have a bad ground, or continuity might be terrible on it. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we got out our multimeter and we're gonna go turn the ignition on. Then we're gonna take this plug, and there's a purple wire here and a gray wire here. The gray wire is our positive, and our signal wire from the computer, or the PCM, is gonna be this purple wire. We're gonna go ahead and probe that, and we should get between 4, 5, and 5 volts. Closer to 5 volts, the better. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're gonna take our positive, which is, of course, the gray, We're gonna shove it in there, and then we're gonna put this into the purple, and you're gonna break your harness, and you're gonna have to go buy another one. And right there, you can see that we have 5.09 volts. Hopefully you can see that. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna reinstall that, and we're gonna probe the back of the harness. This time we're gonna probe the green wire and the purple wire and turn the engine on, and we should have, again, 4.5 volts roughly. And as we increase the throttle, go to wide open throttle, we should see the voltage increase with the throttle increase. I'm gonna go ahead and set that up here now and show you. Also, I wanna say, check this little rubber out. Mine's a little lopsided and crusty and gross. That could be our culprit all along, but we're gonna ignore it for right now and try to figure out something for that. But throw this one back on. We're gonna throw the old GM one that I had on there. Go from there. Huh. Well, funny thing, our check engine light went off immediately. Immediately. She's running smooth. Maybe it's just a fluke thing. Maybe. Let's check her out again. Check engine light went off. So, I'm going to go ahead and say that our new good sensor that we ended up buying from Rock Auto is bad, because our old stock one that I thought was bad is actually good. Hey, figured it out. So I did go ahead and reinstall that, as I mentioned, but if we were going to check this out, which I'm not going to because it's fine now apparently, again, we would probe the purple and the green, have it running, course warmed up, and then we'd crack the throttle, give her some sauce, and you'll see that voltage change on your multimeter. So I'm glad that we figured it out. Good to know we went ahead and checked everything else out on the car. Good to know that my OBD2 to OBD1 port connector plug doesn't work. Good to know that the paperclip trick doesn't work. Always something. Always something. But at any rate, that's probably gonna wrap this video up. I'm gonna go ahead and tidy up some stuff. I gotta get ready for work. And yeah. So until next time, very soon. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.